What's up, duelists? Today I've got a brand new deck for y'all. This is a really powerful deck. I'll go into the explanation in just a second. But if you guys are interested in entering a really big Edison tournament or Edison tournaments that can qualify you for the RBET Rulers in November, go ahead and check out that stream, my latest stream VOD that's up on this channel under the live tab. It will explain the RBET structure for at least the first half of this year, and it'll tell you when those tournaments are happening, etc., etc. If you haven't already checked that out, if you haven't already gotten comfortable with that information, I highly suggest that you do that. Okay, on to the deck. This deck is a flip chaos control lockdown deck. You've got 6 different flip effect monsters, 7 actually if you count Night Assailant. You've got triple Mask of Darkness and triple Dekoichi, and then of course the Night Assailant. These cards can give you proactive card advantage, and then you can utilize that proactive card advantage to either sacrifice your extra body for Caius, or just loop your opponent with Phoenix Wing Windblast, sort of build your own Yata Lock, or you can just amass card advantage and then get to a position in the late game where you have Dark Armed Compulsory, which is a very difficult thing for a lot of decks to deal with, because you can summon Dark Armed, pop their cards, maybe attack for a little bit of damage. If they try to clear your Dark Armed, you can bounce it back to your hand, replay it later on, etc., etc., reuse the compulsory with Mask of Darkness, and just keep reusing the same Dark Armed over and over and over again. So this deck has a lot of really cool late game setups. There's a lot of tech in this deck as well. These style decks, these flip effect style decks where you have, set monster turn 1 and then pass the turn. If you're going second, your opponent gets the opportunity to Caius you before you get an opportunity to Caius them. So you do have to have a couple of responses to Caius. Our biggest one here is Gale the Whirlwind. You can search it off Sangan. So you have kind of like 2 copies of it, sort of. Gale basically responds to resolve Caius on one of your flip effect monsters pretty quickly. And then, of course, you also have Cyber Dragon into your own Caius to sort of reverse that speed. We're also playing Chaos Sorcerer because we do have 5 lights, 2 Thunder Kings, and 2 Dimensional Alchemists. Dimensional Alchemist also gives you second opportunities at some of your big boss monsters like the Sorcerer and the Dark Armed Dragon later in the game. It can also help you like just loop random stuff, like if you need Black Salvo back or if you need a Thunder King or whatever, you can get it back after you've banished it for Chaos Sorcerer. I've considered playing Return in a deck like this, but there's not really enough to maximize or min-max off the Return, like DD Warrior Ladies and that type of stuff, and that's not really what this deck's trying to accomplish, so we're not actually playing Return here. We are playing Call of the Haunted, though. I think Call of the Haunted is pretty good. It's solid chainable with Dimensional Alchemist and Sangan, and then it's also pretty good at making sure we have the speed to Caius our opponent or make a synchro play if we need to come back after we've lost a little bit of tempo. The sideboard's pretty important. We need Double Breaker. The reason being, Trap Stun and Royal Decree give this deck a lot of trouble. This is a very heavy trap deck, and if your opponent's playing stuff like that, it's pretty difficult. Also, we have a second copy of Cyber Dragon for the rare Jinzo, also machine stuff, that sort of thing. I've got 1 copy of Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer. He does really well in decks like this. It's very good against zombies, very good against frogs, that type of thing. You just clear their monster out of the way with a trap card, and then you hit them directly with Kaiku. Banish key cards. Also comes in against Lightsworn. Very useful there as well. Double DD Crow. I'm not super sold on these, but I think I might go down to 1 DD Crow and bring in a second Kaiku to the sideboard after these matches. I'm going to show you guys 4 replays, basically. And then, of course, we've got Dust Tornado, which is a reusable spell and trap removal spell we can use with Mask of Darkness. In some matchups, we actually want to side out the Phoenix Wing and the Night Assailant because they're a little bit hard to support. And then we bring in like the generic 1-for-1, either Trap Hole or Dust Tornado or whatever, Royal Oppression in that case. Royal Oppression obviously is for zombies, glads, that type of stuff. Royal Oppression is very good in decks like this because you can just like clear your opponent's big plays and then use your spot removal on all their small plays and then gain card advantage in the meantime and just take over the game very easily. And then, of course, Pulling the Rug is for Caius, which kind of does destroy this deck, but that's just the nature of things. Caius is going to destroy most decks in Edison format. That's why it's the most played card, and that's why we got 3 in our deck. All right, go ahead, like, subscribe. You know the vibes, etc., etc. Let's get into these replays. So the first replay is against Brown Bear 1254. I do win the die roll, which is really big. With decks like this, winning the die roll is pretty important because it means I get to set down my Dekoichi before my opponent gets an opportunity to either Raiko pop it or Caius pop it. So winning the die roll here is actually really big. We go ahead and set that to Koichi, and I set Deep Prison. The reason I set Deep Prison is even if they have something like a Stratos, I would still prefer to banish it because it's a hero than do something like Phoenix Wing it or whatever. And then once the Deep Prison hits the grave, our Mask of Darkness will be live, and we can set that guy and get our Deep Prison back for later. I do also set the Book of Moon. And the reason I set the Book of Moon is because if they're playing Blackwings and they open Black Whirlwind plus normal summon Blackwing, I want to be able to book their monster on the summon. I don't want to have to wait to deprison it. So that's my rationale here behind setting the book and the deprison. Now, if we get heavy stormed, it kind of sucks, but we still have some ways to come back into the game. Dekoichi will draw us a new card. Mask of Darkness will get us back our deprison. So heavy storm does kind of suck here, but again, this deck plays a bajillion trap cards, and if you get heavy storm for 2 kind of early on, you can usually grind your way back from that, whereas later on is when heavy storm is much more impactful in these types of decks. All right, opponent's playing Upstart Goblin. This, at first, made me really happy that I set the Book of Moon, because I thought that they might be on Blackwings. So they activate another Upstart Goblin here. They set 2, and you'll see that the stats here, it is a Mystic Tomato that they have set. We pick up Bottomless Trap Hole, which is a really good card, because at this point, I still think that they are on Blackwings. But I also think that they have T-set Vayu plus Icarus, so I'm like, maybe they won't let me go to main phase. Maybe they'll Icarus me before I get to the main phase. So I took a little bit of time there to make sure that I could go to the main phase successfully, and then I flipped Dekoichi to draw a card. I am able to draw a card, and we go at +1, and we get our second copy of Phoenix Wing. Now, the second copy of Phoenix Wing is pretty bad because it's like a guaranteed minus. So I almost always discard it to the first copy just because it's like worse than any of our other trap cards at just being a 1-for-1, unless we specifically have drawn our Night Assailant to combo that way, or we need to set up our graveyard for Dark Armed or Chaos Sorcerer pretty much. At this point, I just attack the set. I think maybe it's a Vayu. Let's go ahead and see if that back row is an Icarus that they want to use. It's just a Mystic Tomato. If they had Icarus both of our back row here, I would have been able to chain Book of Moon on the Dekoichi, which would have been a nice little +1 there for us, and then we could have set a couple more back row. This is going to clear the tomato, and they're going to special summon Goblin Zombie from the deck. Main phase 2, I think I set Wind Blast. Now, I don't want to get Caius here. I also do set the Mask of Darkness because I'm guaranteedly going to Wind Blast the opponent in their draw phase to put this Goblin Zombie back on top of their deck. I don't want them to Caius me, basically. I just don't really have a great way to not go minus against Caius. And I want to resolve all my effects before my opponent gets an opportunity to Caius. So I'm just going to use the Phoenix Wing here on the draw phase to put the Goblin Zombie back on top of the deck. This might not be the best play, but it is the play that is the least damaging against Caius the Shadow Monarch. Like, if they Caius me here and banish my Mask of Darkness, and then they get a Search, and then maybe they have their own Phoenix Wing or something like that, and they can set up 3 Darks for Dark Arm. Like, it's just a bad spot to be in. I really don't want to be in that spot. It's not the worst spot, but I'd rather not give them the Search. I'd rather set them back even more turns. Next turn, I can use Mask of Darkness to add back Phoenix Wing again and just keep putting them on the back foot and amassing my advantage. So that's why I like to use the Phoenix Wing here. It might not be the best play, but it's an okay play, I think. I think there's arguments to make it. They do end up top taking Allure of Darkness, which is nice for them. So they are able to draw 2. Here they banish a Krebin. No, they banish Sangan, that's right. So now I know they're basically on like a zombie synchro. It's either Krebin synchro or Diva synchro style zombie deck. And I know that they chose to keep Goblin Zombie over Sangan, which is interesting. Usually when people choose to keep one of those monsters, they choose to keep Sangan. But in this case, they chose to keep Goblin Zombie. Now, in the end phase, I have a couple of options. I could book my own Dekoichi and try to draw, but I actually value book as a piece of interaction in synchro matchups a lot more, especially against decks that could potentially be playing Krebins, because that card's really annoying to deal with. So I save the book. I don't book my Dekoichi here. I just draw for turn, and I pick up Black Salvo. So Black Salvo is really good in this deck. It's basically your, like, get out of jail free card, especially once you've already found Dekoichi, which is really nice. So we have our get out of jail free card. It means that at any point in this game, we can Black Rose. So that's very nice for us. I'm going to go ahead and flip the Mask of Darkness after setting Bottomless Trap Hole. This may look a little weird, but I actually want to play around my opponent having Trap Dust Shoot and taking my Black Salvo, because Black Salvo is actually really good here, and I don't want to lose that to a Trap Dust Shoot. So I go ahead and set the Bottomless, then flip Mask of Darkness, add back Phoenix Wing, and then I attack with the Dekoichi, because I think that there is a chance that it is the Goblin Zombie set, and so I'm going to attack into it. If it's something like a Pyramid Turtle, okay, I don't run into it, or I don't run it over, and that's fine. Like, at least I get it face up in case I top deck like Brain Control or something. And then if it's another Mystic Tomato, that doesn't really bother me all that much because I know they already have Goblin Zombie. So they'll just grab like a Plague and then they'll be able to summon Goblin Zombie, but I have a shitload of back row to deal with that. And I also have Bottomless, so if they synchro with a Goblin Zombie ever, like let's say it's a Tomato and they search Plague and then they summon Goblin Zombie and they synchro into Bryonic, they won't get priority to use Bryonic because of the Goblin Zombie search. So I'll be able to just Bottomless the Bryonic and not worry about that ever again. They end up searching for Zombie Master, which I'm pretty happy about because I have a lot of ways to stop that card from going off. I have Phoenix Wing, I have Book, and I have Bottomless, so I have a lot of ways to just like get card advantage there. We get in our first piece of damage with Mask of Darkness. This is going to be like a chip shot deck. There are some OTK setups, but they're not that common. You'll see in the other matches, though. Here they go for Trap Stun, which is kind of bullshit. That I play against the one zombie synchro deck that's main decking Trap Stun, but hey, here we are. They summoned Zombie Master, and now I'm really happy that I ended up saving my Book because they're going to activate this, they're going to pitch Malicious, target the Goblins. I mean, I'm going to chain Book. And the way this works is Zombie Master has to be face up on the field to resolve. So they're actually not going to be able to bring back the Goblin Zombie. They tried to here, but I let them know that it actually has to be face up on the field. So if you Book it or Compulse it or Phoenix Wing it or whatever in response to its effect, they won't be able to bring back what they targeted. Here, they just set another back row and pass the turn. I pick up Caius, which is really good, but it's a little greedy to go for it outright into something like Torrential Tribute. We could get like, not 3-for-1, but we would lose like our positional advantage. And our monsters already attack over the Zombie Master in defense position, so I don't really need to commit the Caius until they have another set monster that's an unknown, I think. So I go to battle phase, I attack with Mask of Darkness. This is going to run over the Zombie Master, and I attack directly with the Koichi. Now, I could have just switched the Mask of Darkness to defense to play around Mirror Force a little bit better, but I figured if they have Mirror Force, I'll force it now, and then, I don't know. I probably should have just switched Mask of Darkness to defense. It's a little bit greedy to go for the 1400 damage. Our game plan here is actually not so much to kill them by damage, but to grind them out of cards. I thought for a bit here in main phase 2 for going for this Caius. Deck set main deck Trap Stun. I've noticed that people do this a lot. They'll main deck multiple Trap Stuns. They won't just main deck one. I think that that's kind of bad because Trap Stun, when it's good, but when it's bad, it's really bad. So drawing multiples when it's bad is just terrible. So I feel like decks that main deck Trap Stun should be looking to main deck maybe one copy as just like an additional Heavy Storm type of thing. So I thought really hard here about sacking for Caius and just blind targeting something. But the chances of hitting like Call of the Haunted on Goblin Zombie or hitting Return or something, I don't know, not Return, but you get the idea. Mystical Space Typhoon, that kind of thing. It's just too high. Even Torrential Bottomless now, it's still the same risk. So while Trap Stun does kind of beat the fuck out of us here, we can at very least chain Phoenix Wing to it if we need to, and we can just pass the turn. So that's what we end up doing. And they do have a second Trap Stun, confirming my bias that people main deck multiple Trap Stuns. Because for some reason, the people who are fans of this card are just like, yeah, Trap Stun's the GOAT, Trap Stun's the best. And you'll see in this game, I drew fucking 6 trap cards. My opponent drew double Trap Stun, and it just didn't really amount to anything, really. You need so much for this card to be good, and drawing multiples of them when you're just like trying to come back into a game where you're like super far behind it's really bad. Opponent used both of them to -1, so their card advantage is actually just really, really depleted right now. They don't have a lot of gas in the tank. And no matter what synchro they resolve here, it's getting fucked on my turn. If they go for Thought Ruler because they know about Phoenix Wing, then I can just Caius it. And then if they go for Stardust, then I can just Phoenix Wing it, and they know about the Phoenix Wing. So like this play doesn't even matter. They're going to be able to kill one of my monsters that's already gained its advantage, but I don't even care. Like this is fine. This doesn't matter at all. They gain 900. They probably should have ran over the Koichi because even if I have Salvo, I'm never Black Rosing here, but it's fine. They set another back row, and then I sacrifice for Caius and target their Thought Ruler. And at this point in the game, I think my opponent makes a mistake. I think they prematurely concede. Their back rows are Space Typhoon and Royal Oppression. That's interesting. So they are playing Trap Stun, Royal Oppression. This is not a good combination in a deck like this. It's just not. I don't think it's ever really worth it to have Royal Oppression with Trap Stun. If anything in a deck like this, I would say maybe play Breaker plus Royal Oppression. Or don't play Royal Oppression at all and just play like one Trap Stun or something to force through your plays. You're not really looking to lock people out as like the Synchro Zombie deck. You're more so looking to just go for an OTK. And Oppression doesn't help you go for OTKs because it doesn't stop Gores or Trag. It doesn't really stop like DD Crow or Honest or those types of things. So Oppression isn't really playing towards your deck's primary game plan. It's trying to interact with other people's game plan, but the only other deck that Royal Oppression you really want in the main against is probably the Mirror. And the Mirror can just play the same grind game you can, but probably better because they're not the ones paying life points to Royal Oppression, and they're not the ones down a card committing that Royal Oppression. So I think this is actually a very, very bad main deck inclusion here. Yeah, and then Caius is just going to banish the Thought Ruler, and Yeah, we're going to go to game 2. I think it is a bit of a premature concession, but they were down 4 cards, and all of our cards were good, but most of their cards were not. So we're going to go into game 2. I get why they conceded for the sake of time, but that was an interesting game, right? Like, the opponent resolved 2 trap stuns. We had a ton of trap cards. They were able to synchro. They were able to basically do their entire game plan, but they weren't able to establish that position because their card advantage was just a little bit too low, and their card quality was just a little bit too low. So, yeah, I don't love that from the opponent. This game is a little bit more tough. Our hand's a little bit slower. They start off with just a single set card after Upstart Goblining and Allure of Darkness. So the cool thing about playing Upstart Goblin in decks like this is you are going to see your Allure of Darkness more often. The bad thing about Upstart Goblin is, again, your primary game plan is to synchro OTK. Upstart Goblin's going to ruin those OTK setups. On top of that, it's going to increase the chances of drawing double Malicious, drawing multiple Recruiters, drawing multiple Tutors that you can't really normal summon all at once. I think Upstart Goblin in general is pretty bad in strategies like this. I think you don't really need it. I think it ruins your OTK setups. I think, again, drawing multiple Goblin Zombies isn't really a good thing. Okay, moving forward, they just set a lone card. They pass the turn. I normal summon Sanguine. I thought that there's a chance they have a Torrential in the back row. That's why they summon no monsters. And then there's also a chance that they have Brain Control or Mind Control plus a Tuner, because that's like something they're setting up for. They're trying to bait me into summoning a monster so that they can Brain, Mind, and then Synchro. In that case, I want them to Synchro off with my Sanguine of all cards. So I normal summon the Sanguine and I attack. They go for Trap Dust Shoot on the attack. And now I'm like, fuck, he got me. He has Gores. So what I'm going to do from this point in the game is I'm just going to book my Sanguine. And I'm going to go down 2 cards, which is rough. It is really rough. And they're going to be able to take my Gale, which sucks. But we have a Sanguine in play. We've not triggered their Gores. Their Gores is technically a dead card. So at this point in the game, they have 1 dead card in their hand. So it's kind of like we lost the Book of Moon to trade for the Gores. Kind of, because now we have information that they have it. On their turn, they draw. They set a monster. It's their own Sanguine. Now here I flip my, I don't flip my Sanguine. I don't want to attack. I basically don't want to attack into a Goblin Zombie. I don't want to flip anything face up if I don't need to. I'm just going to T-set and pass. The opponent has sacrificed Sanguine for Caius, which really sucks, which means we're going to bleed even more cards. Sanguine's going to search them a Goblin Zombie, I believe. And they're going to banish my Sanguine. So I'm going to take 1,000 damage here, setting me back to 8,000 from that Upstart Goblin. And yeah, they are going to search for the Goblin Zombie. Now I do have to deprison this Caius because I don't have an out. So I just have to deprison it. They set a back row and then pass the turn. So them setting a back row here doesn't make a lot of sense to me because they have Gores, right? And there are a lot of back rows that would lock up Gores here. And one of those is Call of the Haunted. Now they know we have Space Typhoon, but I'm never going to Typhoon their back row when I know that they have Gores that's potentially dead in their hand. So I'm never going to blind Typhoon this and get them to chain for Sanguine. It's really greedy to do this. Plus, I know that they know I have Typhoon. So because of that, I'm never going to blind Typhoon a back row because it's probably just a chainable or a bluff every single time. So on this turn, I go ahead and flip the Koichi. I draw a card, and then I attack for 1,400. Now what they should have done here was actually activate the Call of the Haunted. This either forces me to attack over the Sanguine, giving them another tutor, or it forces me to Space Typhoon, and then they can drop their Gores that I'm assuming they have. We haven't checked their hand. I'm curious to see if they do have that Gores, but in any case, I think this is a bit of a misstep from them. It sets them back a little bit of damage, which is bad because if they drop too low, all of a sudden that Gores becomes a completely dead card. So I just think they should have played their card when they had the chance to. Now I'm going to set the Space Typhoon in case they, want to use the Space Typhoon on this. I can chain it on their new back row, or not their new back row, but their middle set. So I think because I have a target, it's okay to set the Space Typhoon here. Next turn, I can maybe, I'm trying to also bait something on my back row so I can commit this Call of the Haunted safely to set up for like a Call Caius play, something like that. Here they just set another monster, which is kind of interesting to me. So I just sack for Caius. Again, I'm never going to Typhoon that back row. They set it knowing that I have Typhoon in my hand, so it's probably a bluff or a chainable. So I just go for the Caius, target their monster, and banish it. They take 1,000, and that's great for us. They can't drop Gores here because they do control a card. I am going to attack directly, and they are going to bring back Sanguine with Call of the Haunted on this turn. Now, I say target, lol, because they have 1 monster engraved, which is pretty funny. Here I do end up attacking with this Caius. I could not attack. I could chain the Space Typhoon on the call, But then they take 2400 and then they drop Gores. If they drop Gores, then Gores over the Caius is kind of rough. I take 2400. If they have further back row, it's like bad because I don't have the Typhoon anymore. I can't really grind out of that position very effectively. And while they do drop to 3200, Brain Control on its own is not going to get me anywhere. Because Brain Control, take Gores, and then Call of the Haunted on Caius is still only 2700 damage, and it's not going to be enough for lethal. So I do elect to let them get the Sangan back. I save my Typhoon for maybe a Trap Stun or something later on. I attack over the Sangan, and then deal 1400 to the opponent, putting them a little bit lower, trying to get to a position where I can set up for their Gores to be dropped, and then Brain Control and take the Gores and kill them that way. They go ahead and search Mystic Tomato, which is pretty good. That's going to keep them on the board, basically, while also setting up more Darks in their grave for Dark Arm Dragon. Main phase 2, I don't set the Call of the Haunted. I'm still a little bit afraid of Heavy Storm, and they're actually getting pretty low on cards in deck, so the chances of them finding Heavy Storm are pretty high here. And I have Legacy of Yata plus Typhoon. 2 cards I do not mind if they storm. They go for another Upstart. I go up to 9,000. They set presumably the Mystic Tomato at this point, and then they just pass the turn. Here I pick up Dust Tornado, which is laughably bad, but I did bring it in because I knew that there was a chance that they could go Trap Stun, OTK me, and I need to have ways to answer the Trap Stun. So I brought in both Breakers and both Dust Tornadoes to deal with Trap Stun specifically. Here I activate Legacy of Yata, just try to find another Caius. I do not. I find Chaos Sorcerer, and I actually misboarded, I think, in this matchup. I sided out one of my Caiuses when I probably should have sided out the Chaos Sorcerer. I think Chaos Sorcerer is a better card than Caius overall, but in this specific matchup, when the opponent's just like setting recruiters and shit, if I can just streamline Caiuses, it's really hard for me to lose. So I probably should have just kept in the third Caius instead of the Chaos Sorcerer. Also, you can see here, Brain Caius would have been really good. Probably would have closed this game out much quicker. In any case, I just set my Call of the Haunted now because I'm like, okay, if they have Heavy Storm, they have Heavy Storm. Whatever. At least I get him here, and then I can like draw more trap cards after and set that. End phase, they discard Malicious, which I'm like, okay, they're probably trying to set up for Dark Arm Dragon, or they're probably trying to set up for a big Synchro turn. I pick up Solemn Judgment. I'm like, that's pretty fucking good because that can stop the Dark Arm Dragon they're probably setting up for. So I go ahead and set Dust Tornado, and I set the Solemn Judgment, giving them a 50-50 if they want to go for a Blind Typhoon. And if they Heavy Storm, I do have to Solemn it. I might not Solemn it, but I think I just... I might not Solemn it because it's hard for them to kill from 9,000. Then maybe I could Brain their Dark Armed and reversal them. There's a chance that that could happen. Who knows? Here they just set another monster and pass, and here we pick up Dekoichi, which is really nice because that means we can commit another monster to the board. What's happening here? What's happening here? I think we just set the Dekoichi, and I think we just pass. Yep. Again, I don't really want to attack any of their set monsters. I don't want to give them any effects, and I don't want to put a third Dark in the grave for them. I want them to have to do it themselves, you know? Commit something here. Here they sack for Caius, and I think really hard about Solemning this. If I Solemn this, they can still go down to 3 Darks pretty easily with either Malicious or Plague in case they've drawn the second Malicious, and so it would just really screw me over if I Solemn this and they have Dark Arm. So I let the Caius resolve. They target the Dekoichi. We lose 1,000 life points. It really sucks, but at least we got one of their monsters out of play. We got the Caius out of their hand. They're going to crash the Caiuses. And now our Call of the Haunted is actually pretty good because it can bring back Caius, which is just a huge monster that can pressure the opponent. They set a card in their back row. Here, I decide to end phase Typhoon because I do have a Dust Tornado, and there's a chance I draw another trap card back-to-back turns, and then I actually want to set them back-to-back turns because I have the Solemn to back it up. So I'm actually trying to clear up space, and I'm just trying to use my cards one for one to neutralize the situation. Yes, it was a bluff. Yes, I knew it was a bluff, but at this point in time, I have Dust Tornado. So I have another Typhoon. And plus, they know about the Typhoon, so it's always going to be bad as long as they know about it. So now that they don't know that I have a Typhoon type effect, it's going to be much better. The next back row they're going to set, I can pretty much guarantee is going to be real. Okay, so we draw Torrential. Again, happy that I used my Typhoon, so I can set my Torrential and still have the ability to activate Brain Control next turn if I really need to. So I do that. Opponent flips their Mystic Tomato. This is a tomato we knew about off of Sangan. Here I could Torrential, but I think that that's like a shitty trade. I just let it happen. They attack, and I Call the Haunted targeting Caius. So the reason I call Caius here is because I want to be able to attack over this tomato, deal an extra 1,000, and put them down to 3,200, while also trying to play around the scores. I just want to get in these chip shots, put them low enough so that I have a direct attack that kills them. Also, if I find Dimensional Alchemist, I can crash Dimensional Alchemist into Tomato, add back either Dekoichi or Sangan, and then Special Summon Chaos Sorcerer and banish this Tomato. So I don't want to take the damage because I don't want to get OTK'd by something like a big Dark Arm synchro turn. And then I also want to definitely attack over this tomato on the next turn. So we're going to go ahead and do that. At this point, we pick up Bottomless. So it's a good thing we use that Typhoon because we're going to want to commit that Bottomless as well. I go ahead and attack the tomato, get that 1,000 damage that is building up towards my game plan. They tutor out their second Goblin Zombie, and they're kind of running low on dudes. Like, they have Zombie Master, but that's it, really. Zombie Master Mizuki is all that they really have left to grab here. I'm going to go ahead and set the Bottomless and pass. Bottomless can stop their first play, and then Torrential can stop the big play with Malicious Plague, and then Solemn can stop either Dark Armed or Return or whatever, like, crazy final thing, or it can stop Heavy Storm if that's what they have. Here, they just summon Krebins, they synchro, but this is totally fine. Like, they're going to make Gaia Knight, but I'm going to chain to Goblin Zombie's effect Bottomless and banish the Gaia Knight. And this is fine, because like, Zombie Master doesn't really amount to too much here. It can make a Revived King, like a quick Revived King if they really wanted to, but it'll still be 2 cards into any one of my back row, kind of like this was. This is a 1-for-1 trade, but I'm pretty happy with this 1-for-1 trade. Also, I'm happy using Bottomless on an Earth monster, not a Dark monster. I want to get their Dark count so high that they can't possibly Dark Armed me. That's another thing. Also, because I know that they're playing Krebins later in the game, Telekinetic Powerwell could put them in a game shot of Gores, that kind of thing too. They've already normaled, so they just pass, and now we pick up Starlight Road, which is amazing. That means we're totally insulated from Heavy Storm, which means we can save Solemn Judgment for Dark Arm Dragon and basically just win the game guaranteed. So now I start attacking the monsters. I'm like, okay, you're out of good stuff to get with Tomato. You're out of good stuff to get with whatever. I'm just going to start attacking everything that you put into play. Here they grab Armageddon Knight, and they have nothing left to send, which tells me that either their third Krebins is in their hand or it's sided out. But rarely do you side out Krebins. So I know for a fact in their hand they have Gores, Zombie Master, and Krebin. So I know at least 3 of the cards in their hand. I know that Dark Arm Dragon is probably dead. I know that any back row that they have, they can't really afford to set because then it cuts off their Gores. So they're just in a really bad spot where their own hand is like locking up their own shit. And then at this point they just concede, which I think again is a premature concession. Brown Bear 1254 if you're watching this. Let's look at what they had in their hand. So they had Skill Drain, which I don't know if that would have been good. We had Dust Tornado pretty much the whole game. They had Zombie Master. They had Solemn. They could have done something with that maybe. They had Doom Caliber. They had... Let's just show both. They did have the Gores. They had triple Doom Caliber. Wow. Okay. Yeah, so they got owned. I think that they did not use their cards correctly, to say the least. I don't know when they drew these cards, though. So, yeah. We knew about the Gores. We kept it dead from the first turn of the game. So that Book of Moon on the Sangan, while it did put us down in cards, it kept their activity low. It made it so that they could never really set back row without cutting off their own Gores. I think they probably should have just bit the bullet and started setting back row and just realized that their Gores was going to be dead no matter what at some point. But yeah, and Doom Caliber Knight, while I do like it in this deck, I think I like it more as a 2-of, and it's obviously really bad alongside Skill Drain for reasons, because your opponent will just activate an effect and kill your Doom Caliber Knight, an effect that would normally be negated by Skill Drain. So I do not like Skill Drain in these types of decks at all. I think it's pretty bad. And again, I don't like the Upstart Goblins either. So a few changes to this deck that I don't love, and I think that those could have affected things. Doom Caliber Knight, again, is a card I don't love 3 of. I think 2 of is totally a perfect number. You already have a lot of normal summons, and it's really only good against like Glads and like quick draw type decks where you need it to like cut off Drill Warriors or like cut off Geyserist type plays under Trap Sun, Cold Wave, that kind of thing. So good game overall. I think the opponent's list looks a little bit sloppy, and I think that this was maybe a premature concession. They definitely have a shot at actually putting something together here, but realistically we were probably going to win this one. They're just too low for the scores to ever matter. Solemn Judgment or Skill Drain puts them so low. We have the biggest monster out of all the monsters here. They could have normal summoned Goblin Zombie and just started pitching these Doom Calibers to try to make the synchro play happen. One thing they could have also done too is use Plague Spreader to stack one of these dead Doom Calibers and then shuffle it away with the Malicious. So they could have tried to play this game out, which is why I don't like this concession. But realistically, they're not playing through Torrential Solemn with Caius here, because I'll just like Solemn their first big monster, and then I'll Torrential their second big monster. And then if they make a third big monster run over my Caius, I brain control and kill them. So That's probably what would have happened if they had played it out. Okay, next match against 4 yugioh. Against 4 yugioh, I do win the die roll again. Again, it's just really important in these flip effect style decks to win the die roll. And here, I actually draw the nuts. And this is the nuts right here. It's Trap Dust Shoot, Mask of Darkness. That is the nuts. Because once you have Trap Dust Shoot on the first turn of the game, you get to take your opponent's best card. And then Mask of Darkness, on turn 3, you take your opponent's best card again, and they just can't win. It's so insane. Plus, on top of that, we have our 1 copy of Dark Arm Dragon. So you can kind of see how this game's going to go. We're going to normal summon Thunder King, which is going to be insane against Ecall, Stratos, that type of thing, Machina Gear Frame, etc. And then we're going to be able to Trap Dust Shoot and take any way that they have to respond to this Thunder King. So I summon Thunder King, and then I set 2. We also have Book of Moon here. And then I go for Trap Dust Shoot. So they show us their hand. And this is actually an interesting hand here. A lot of people would snap take the Gores, but our deck is a control deck. And you saw in the last game how easily we can play around Gores, the Emissary of Darkness, and actually turn it into card disadvantage for the opponent. If you look at the opponent's hand, they have 2 pieces of back removal, Space Typhoon and Heavy Storm. They're most likely going to be looking at gunning this Space Typhoon on our back row, summoning the Sangan, and then booking and running over our Thunder King, clearing it, because Thunder King is brutal against decks like this, which I'm assuming are some type of like Synchro deck, because they've got Necrogarna and they've got Sangan, as well as Book of Moon, which you don't normally see Book of Moon and Sangan in decks like Lightsworn, decks that normally play Necrogarna. So I think like you can see Book of Moon and Sangan in those decks, but it's just pretty rare because they're not, I don't think they're like the best choices by any means. So I'm going to take the Sangan here, actually, and just never play into the Gores. So they have Necrogarna, Book, Space Typhoon Heavy, and Gores. None of that can do anything to what we have going on. And then on a later turn, we can Mask of Darkness, get our Trap Dust Shoot back, take the Gores, and then go for our push. So here they set 1 back row, and I'm just like, that has to be Space Typhoon, right? Like that just has to be Space Typhoon, because if we attack and it's Book of Moon, they either have to take the damage or they have to book the Thunder King, which is bad because they have nothing to do with that, and it's just a raw -1. So I think that they got us here pretty good because they did set Book of Moon, and we didn't actually end up attacking here because if it was Space Typhoon, we would get owned. So I just set my monster and pass, but that's a pretty smart play from the opponent to set the book here, recognizing the situation. Once I know about Gore's Typhoon, the set card's obviously going to be what it should be, etc. And then they pick up Mizuki. So here they go for Space Typhoon on our back row, and I'm like, okay, that's just going to happen. They summon Mizuki, and then they are going to attack our Thunder King and book it, is what I thought they were going to do. But instead, they attack our set monster. And I think that this is actually a pretty critical error from the opponent here. I think you just need to clear the Thunder King, because this is going to beat the shit out of you. It doesn't matter what you get set up here. If you draw a Goblin Zombie, you get owned by Thunder King. If you draw whatever else, you get owned by Thunder King. If I draw a back row removal, all of a sudden you're just losing your Mizuki and your back row. You're just losing. You're just straight up losing. And I'm dust shooting you again. Well, they don't know I'm dust shooting them again, but yeah, like imagine this is a Raikou and it pops your back row. Like it's just such a not great situation for you to attack the set monster. I think you have to take the opportunities that you get, run over the Thunder King with the back row, and then if it is a Raikou, okay, pop my Mizuki. Like you're pretty happy about that, if anything. So we get to add back the Dust Shoot. That's going to be able to take the Gores next turn unless they set Heavy Storm here. But if they set Heavy Storm here, our Heavy Storm would have been an insane blowout. So it just ends up being okay. Here, I do go for the Heavy Storm. I do clear their book. They chain it on their Mizuki to save them some life points. It's the best they can do at this point. They definitely should have run over the Thunder King when they got the chance. I attack over the Mizuki. I set the Dust Shoot, and I actually do set the Sangan here. And the reason I set the Sangan here is because our deck's pretty slow. It's pretty slow to the board. They have to out the Thunder King to really do anything at all. So they're probably not going to be attacking my Sangan. They'll be attacking the Thunder King, if anything. And then if they clear the Thunder King, like somehow, miraculously, I don't fucking know how, then we'll be able to basically top deck a Kaya, sack our Sangan for it, go from there. Or we'll already have the Sangan in play, and we can use our Black Salvo to synchro with the Sangan. So I'm thinking commit to the position a little bit more, amass our summon tempo advantage, and then if we do find something like a Caius, we could maybe even play into this Gores, basically, which would be really sick. So here I do Dust Shoot them, and I do see that they picked up Solemn Judgment, which means we're just going to own them. We're going to take the Gores. They're going to set all 3 of their cards. On our turn, we find Caius the Shadow Monarch, which is an amazing draw. We already have 1 Dark in our graveyard, so we're just going to flip the Sangan. And I know that this is a Necrogarna, so we can just attack. And then I make the same play I made last turn, actually, which is setting Black Salvo. Now, this isn't the best play, but I think it works. Next turn, if they don't find anything, or if they just find a monster or whatever, I can flip Black Salvo, synchro with Thunder King into Black Rose, and then force the Solemn Judgment, put them to 35, and then Dark Arm Dragon plus Caius is actually lethal. So, yeah, they find a monster, and I'm like, cool, this is kind of exactly what I wanted them to draw. They're going to run over my Sangin, because it's not a Goblin Zombie or whatever. A Goblin Zombie, they might let the Black Rose resolve, that kind of thing. But since it's a Mystic Tomato, they're for sure going to Solemn here, right? Sangin doesn't search because of Thunder King Ryo, of course. We flip the Black Salvo, and I go for that exact play. I just synchro into Black Rose. They have to Solemn. They drop to 35, and then Dark Arm plus Caius is lethal. So, easy. OTK setup. 1-2 punch. That was the nuts. That was like the actual nut draw, which is Dust Shoot plus whatever. And then the opponent made one pretty critical error not killing our Thunder King there. I think that was a definite choke. Like a Giga choke for sure. For sure, Giga choke. But yeah, we're going to go to game 2. Yep. And then we go second. Oh, shoot. I'm still showing both hands. Okay, cool. This game, I did side in the Kaiku. And you're going to see why I want a second one here in a second. It's really good. They T-set, and then they pass. We pick up Starlight Road, and I'm like, damn, this hand is crazy. This hand is really good. For me, this is one of the best decks in drawing Solemn Judgment, just because oftentimes when you Solemn Judgment, you're like, fuck, now my Solemn's gone, and your life points are low. But in this deck, you can Solemn, and then you can Massive Darkness, get it back later, and then have more Solemns, which is nice. It just gives you more Omni Negates throughout the game, which is pretty cool. So finding Solemn early is actually pretty good in a deck like this. I just go ahead and Typhoon it, like fuck it, what could it possibly be if it's not Dust Shoot? I waited a little while to see if they would Dust Shoot me. And here I just summon Kaiku and set 3. If it's a Battle Recruiter, I don't want to attack it. If it's a Goblin Zombie, I don't want to attack it. If they're going to sack it for Caius, I want to Solemn it. And then I'll still have Road plus Yata Grasu in case they go for some shenanigans. So here they just set 2 back row and pass. I go ahead and draw Trap Dust Shoot. So I drew the fabled Solemn Dust Shoot combo. So I'm going to go for Dimensional Alchemist here, and you're going to see that drawing Solemn Dust Shoot, it doesn't really matter if you draw Dust Shoot if you win the game this turn. They go for Torrential. I'm like, let's go. I activate Starlight Road. They activate their Solemn, dropping to 4,000 life points. I activate my Solemn, dropping to 4,000 life points, but now I have game. So I just activate Dimensional Alchemist. I attack. If it's a Goblin Zombie, they're dead. If it's a Necrogarna, they're dead. Yeah. So I attack with Dimensional Alchemist. Necrogarna goes to the grave. I attack with Kaiku. They try to activate this Necrogarna, but you can't. You can't actually activate this Necrogarna because Kaiku says your opponent cannot banish cards from either graveyard. So you can't pay the cost on Necrogarna. It can't be activated. They're going to take 1,800, and they're going to take 2,500 from the Stardust Dragon. And we're going to get a nice little turn 2 kill here thanks to Starlight Road being broken as shit. And that's just how it goes sometimes. You play the control deck, your opponent plays a sweeper, and you get them pretty good. Honestly, if I was the opponent, I would have considered maybe not setting the Necrogarna there. Maybe just setting the Torrential, maybe just not setting Torrential Solemn, but I get it. 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 You have Torrential Solemn. You think, what could possibly go wrong, right? And then your opponent has Starlight Solemn and you get fucked. And that's how it goes. Okay, next game. Next game. This is against Broken Paragon 3-4-5. We go ahead and go first. Very, very lucky yet again. But our hand is not that great for going first. We have a little bit of awkward stuff going on. I actually make this play, which is just set Call of the Haunted, set Torrential Tribute. I want to set both in case, again, they have Whirlwind or they have a Gladiator Beast monster. I don't really want to Torrential any of my monsters. If I Dialk miss, which is more likely the case than not, because we have 4 monsters in our hand and 2 non-monsters in our hand, and we have an equal number of monsters and non-monsters. So it's more likely that I'll miss with this Dialk than hit. I don't really want to just like summon it and start like blind milling straight up. Plus next turn I can summon this Cyber Dragon and reversal any sort of like random like Fire Dog or something. They set 2 back row and then just pass, and I'm like, okay, now I'll start going for the Dialk because I have Book of Moon. I want to bait one of these back row so my Cyber Dragon sticks. I want to just start getting my engine going, and plus if it does hit, I have Call of the Haunted to abuse it, kind of. And if it doesn't hit, then like let's say it trades for a D Prison, I might book it, I might not, I might just let it get banished. Like that's probably fine for me. And if they summon a monster to run it over, I do now have this Book of Moon to protect it, so I can get multiple activations out of this Dialk pretty easily, I think. We do miss because, again, we are more likely to miss in this scenario than not, so that's just going to be the case. But we do get in 1800 damage, which is always good. And here I set the book to try and protect the Dimensional Alchemist. They have Rhoda, which I'm just going to let resolve. They're going to grab Dark Grepher. They're going to summon Grepher, and they're going to activate the effect with priority. Now, I could Torrential, but we wouldn't get anything back with this Dialk. So it's a little bit of a waste of our Torrential. I'm just going to let this happen. They're going to pitch Malicious, send Plague, and I'm like, okay, now we'll just wait on the Torrential. We'll just wait on it, because they're eventually going to go for this. They've committed a lot of cards to not summon this, but to set up that graveyard play. So they're going to go for it eventually. And that means the Torrential is going to be good eventually. They go ahead and attack over the Dialk, and I don't book their monster. I just let it happen. I kind of want to save the book in case they're playing like Trapstone or something. I just want more defense because this is a scary position to be in. They're going to go to 3 darks. They could have Dark Arm Dragon. I want to have a couple different chainables in the back row in case they do have Dark Arm Dragon. Hold. We got to come back to this. I have to answer this call. And now we're back. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. That was a little bit of a cutout there. Fine, I'm gonna do a little editing. You guys didn't notice a thing. You guys didn't even notice that I had to go take a phone call for the last 6 hours. all right, we're back. Where the fuck was I in this game? Oh my gosh. Okay, Dark Grepher activated. Discards Malleys. Just sends Plague. So the opening hand was Rhoda, Grepher, Rhoda, Malley, 2 back row that we don't know. They attacked over the Dialk. Yeah, I wanted them to attack over the Dialk because I want to special summon the Cyber Dragon on the next turn. That's pretty much it. And also I wanted to save my 2 back row to sort of do some more stuff. I could have booked the Grepher again, but then we would have had just Torrential to stop like a later Dark Armed, which could have got dicey if they had a way to clear our back row. So I think this was an okay play, just to preserve our interactive pieces, especially when the opponent still has a full hand of cards, more or less. We draw a Heavy Storm, which obviously sucks here because we have more back row than our opponent. Special summon the Cyber Dragon and attack the Dark Grepher. Now, surprisingly here, this just goes through. The opponent just lets this happen. I don't know what their back rows could be, but I figured at least one of them would protect their Dark Grepher from the Cyber Dragon attack. I don't know. Maybe they didn't value the Dark Grepher that much, but it puts us up a solid card, which is really nice. It does put the opponent to 3 darks, which means Dark Arm Dragon is now live, but like I said, we have a couple of chainable ways to deal with that. And then we can always attack over it or Call of the Haunted or Dialk and try to do something that way the next turn. So that's kind of where we're at. They pick up a card. They set another back row and then just pass, I believe. Yep, so they don't attempt to go for the synchro play into the multiple back rows. And they don't special summon something like a Dark Arm Dragon, which is kind of wild. I'm actually just shocked that this is the position we're in. I go ahead and attack directly with the Cyber Dragon, and to my surprise, it just goes through, and we're able to get in a fat 2100 points of damage, which is starting to put the opponent in a really bad position now that I'm seeing things. We go ahead and set Bottomless and pass the turn. Here, they discard Dandelion and special summon out Quick Draw Synchron. Dandelion's effect is going to activate, and they're going to gain 2 tokens. The opponent, I think, here makes a pretty big error, and the pretty big error is not going for Chimera Tech. Now, their deck does have both Quick Draw in it and Plague Spreader in it, so I know in decks like this, extra deck space can be a little bit tight. It can be hard to fit Chimera Tech in decks like that because you need to have at least 5, I believe 5 or 6 synchros for Quick Draw Synchron to make the full suite of threats. And then on top of that, you have to have a ton of different synchros for Plague Spreader, Malicious, stuff like Dark End Dragon you need space for, and you got to make space for it somehow, right? You got to cut something. So they've probably cut into their Chimera Tech, but it's actually punishing them quite a bit here because they're going to synchro into Drill Warrior instead of going for the Chimera Tech with our Cyber Dragon and Quick Draw Synchron because it is a machine, so you can contact Synchro that way, or contact Fusion that way. And then we're able to just Bottomless the Drill, and it's just a solid 2-for-1 for us. Like, Bottomless just trades for 2 cards, and we go up even more card advantage. Now we're drawing to 8 cards, and they have, I mean, technically 6, but Malicious isn't really a real card here. They go ahead and try to stack for the Plague, and then here I just Torrential. I'm like, fuck it. They didn't have an answer for the Cyber Dragon before, so that means I can just Call of the Haunted it and attack directly. I'll take my next 2-for-1, which is clearing the Malicious and the Plague Spreader for the Torrential. I do lose the Cyber Dragon, though, so it's technically like a 2-for-2, I guess. 2-for-2, but we're still up cards. And now we actually have less back row, and our graveyard's looking pretty good. So we can Call of the Haunted Dimensional Alchemist, maybe mill a monster, maybe go for a value Heavy Storm 3-for-1, 3-for-2 Heavy Storm. We do get Dust Shooted here, though, which sucks. I'm a little bit curious as to why they waited on this Dust Shoot so long. Maybe they just didn't have an opportunity to use it. I don't really remember what the state was like until we got to this point. They go ahead and take Dekoichi, which sucks. You know, that sucks. Dekoichi would have been really, really good for this hand. It would have been, obviously, a material for Black Salvo. It would have given us another draw, and it would have been another Dark towards Dark Armed, but that's just the nature of it. Sometimes you get Dust Shooted. And then we go ahead and call the Dialk, I believe. Yep. And this is because if the Call of the Haunted gets removed, I do want to be able to get back a monster, ideally. Here we're able to banish a Mask of Darkness, which is really nice. So we can actually go for a Heavy Storm, clearing all the back row, add back the Mask of Darkness, maybe set it and try to get back one of our powerful trap cards. Most likely going to look at this Call of the Haunted, but if not the Call of the Haunted, then I don't know. They do have Book of Moon, and they chained it on the Dialk, so that's another card that they could have potentially had to interact with the Cyber Dragon. They go ahead and chain that, and then they also chain Phoenix Wing Windblast on our other back row, discarding their second copy of Dandelion. So they actually had a pretty good opening hand. They had Quick Draw Dandy, and then they had Grepher Malicious, and they had Dust Shoot. So it was like a pretty good opening hand. It just didn't really line up well against the way we were playing this game, like more passive, more value-oriented, and grinding out like small attacks, forcing them to use their back row suboptimally into the Cyber Dragon and Dialk, etc. So yeah, and we are able to sweep away the 2 back row. The opponent drops to 0 cards to our 3. They are going to draw for turn, and they are going to have these tokens, but the card that they drew for turn is a card that we know they stacked for Plague, so it was dead in their hand last turn. I elect to normal summon Black Salvo, despite not having a target here, because it puts us 1 dark closer to special summoning Darkharm Dragon in case it gets cleared. And I just want to remove these tokens. Next turn, we can attack over a token with Black Salvo again, and then directly for 1800. Put the opponent on not quite a 2-turn clock, but technically a 2-turn clock, because if you count the Black Salvo's extra 100 points on the next turn, or the fact that we can synchro with it, then it could technically become a 2-turn clock. Here they top deck Brain Control, and this sort of confirms my suspicion that they maybe don't have Chimera Tech in the main, because they synchro into Armory Arm. And Armory Arm is a card that you really have to make space for in extra decks like this. Like, you can't really have the full suite of quick draw stuff and have like Debris Dragons potentially and have the Destiny Hero Malicious stuff and have Plague Spreader stuff with Armory Arm, unless you've made some cuts somewhere, and the cuts are probably in the Chimera Tech. Here they attack over the Dialk, and then this is going to add back Mask of Darkness. So actually, all things considered, pretty good situation for us. We go ahead and set the Mask, and we set the book too as well. The reason I set the book is because if they go for a Caius, I don't know if we want to take the full amount of damage. We might, but we might want to book it just to protect us. And also it can interrupt something like maybe a Debris Dragon coming down and messing with our day. They go ahead and just pass. I didn't understand this pass at the time, but later on in the game I understand why they passed instead of attacking. I go ahead and flip the Mask. I add back Call of the Haunted, because Call of the Haunted is just another threat, and that's kind of what we're missing right now. We have Bottomless and Book of Moon for defense. I don't think we really need further defense. I just think we need another threat, and Call of the Haunted is a great one. So I flip the Mask of Darkness, add back Call, and then I set 2 and pass. And this set 2 is actually really stupid, because I should know for a fact that they've drawn Heavy Storm. The reason being is they want me to flip the Mask of Darkness of my own volition, and they want me to set the trap card of my own volition, and then they want me to Heavy Storm me on the next turn. So that's something that I should have read into. Otherwise, they would just attack over the Mask of Darkness, and yeah, swing into the back row, which they don't know about. But since they do have Heavy Storm, it makes sense that they wouldn't swing. They're waiting for the next turn so that they can Heavy Storm, clear potential Mirror Force, or Deprison in my middle set back row, as well as the trap card that I add back off of the Mask of Darkness that they know about. So I should have not set this Bottomless here. It's pretty obvious that the last card in their hand is Heavy Storm, and I should have been able to deuce that, but a bit of a mistake on my part, for sure. Thankfully, I do have Book of Moon to reset the Mask of Darkness, and this will add back the Call of the Haunted. Here they summon Armageddon Knight, and they send Necrogarna. Normally this Necrogarna would be a problem, but they really have nothing worth defending here. They go ahead and attack the Mask of Darkness. Mask of Darkness is going to add back Call of the Haunted, giving me an additional threat to maybe come back from this position. If they ever leave this Armory Arm unequipped, I can bring back Cyber Dragon and make Chimera Tech off of it. They attack for 1800. We go ahead and take that damage. Then main phase 2, they actually elect to equip the Armory Arm, which I think is really interesting. On our turn, we pick up Gale the Whirlwind, which is beautiful. Not only is it our third dark for Dark Armed, but it's actually a one card answer to their whole board. It forces the Necrogarna. It's just a really, really, really good draw. And it's part of the reason I really like Gale in decks like this. Sometimes you just need to respond to a slightly larger than average threat. And Gale does a pretty good job of doing that off the top, as well as like off of a Second Search or Call of the Haunted or something like that. So I summon Gale, I put this Armageddon Knight to 1200 attack, and then I attack it. They're forced to use Necrogarnet. Now on their turn, they can bring the Armory Arm back and attack over Gale that way, but that's fine. We have Call of the Haunted, we have Dark Armed. We're pretty much guaranteedly going to win next turn. So they're going to attack the Gale because they forgot that Gale is permanent, and they get kind of self-owned here. And then he says, why am I so dumb? It's one of those mistakes that you only make once. And then, yeah, he loses his monster. Main phase 2 summons the Cyber Valley. But as you can see, I can just call the Cyber Dragon and either contact with this, attack for game, or I can Synchro and then drop Dark Arm for game. So, yeah, I probably should have contacted and then attacked for game because it doesn't reveal that we have Dark Arm Dragon in our deck, but I'm pretty sure the opponent can just assume that we have Dark Arm Dragon in our deck based off of the composition that they've seen so far. So we're not really giving away too much information. If anything, we're making them play more afraid of Dark Armed in the following games, boarding in cards that maybe aren't that great against us, like maybe DD Crow, something like that. Okay, game 2. What do we have in this game? Oh, okay. In this game, I sided in the Breakers because Breaker is just a good card. That's so I sided it in. I know it's good logic, right? Good logic. Was there any reason why I sided this in? Oh, they have like Book of Moons, Phoenix Wings, and stuff, and I just wanted to get like easy +1s on them with Breaker, basically. If you're forced to Phoenix Wing a Breaker the Magical Warrior, it actually feels pretty bad because you go -1 and then I'm drawing Breaker again. You can't really set effectively into it in general. So I think Breaker is actually a pretty good play into Phoenix Wing as long as you're not under a serious amount of pressure. So that's why I boarded it in. I saw Book of Moon, I saw Phoenix Wing, and Breaker is just a good way to force those cards out. They're probably siding out the Book of Moons too because they saw a lot of flip effects like Mask and Dekoichi. They go ahead and T-set. You can see here it's a Sangin. We go ahead and normal summon the Breaker, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. I thought that they would side out the Book of Moons. Turns out they didn't. I think that's a little bit of a misboard from the opponent. It's usually not a great card against these flip effect decks, but it ends up working out okay for them here. We do get our +1, and we are able to set Mirror Force and pass. This turn, they summon Stratos. They go ahead and search. They grab Malicious. So this is telling me a little bit more about their deck. It's telling me, like, okay, they've got Rhoda for Stratos. They've also got Rhoda for Grepher. Kind of a small, like, Teledad sort of vibe engine with the quick draw stuff. I normally don't like mixing these engines. I think they're clunky and bad to mix together. Like, quick draw plus Malicious, while it is a combo, it's not exactly a combo because, like, what do you amount to? 2 weak as shit monsters in play? Like, that doesn't really get you anywhere. Whereas, like, I think with the other, like, sort of stuff, like pitching a Volcanic Shell, for example, instead of Malicious or something like that, at least you're getting a shell and then you can make Drill, and then it's net positive and you're actually going forward with your game plan. I think also, too, another thing that Drill Warrior's really good with is, like, high-value monsters, bringing back high-value monsters that can gain you really, really powerful effects turn after turn. Stuff like Caius the Shadow Monarch, stuff like Raikou, etc. Lone Fire Blossom, that type of thing for Titanial. Getting those cards back with Drill Warrior is really good, but I think getting back Stratos is pretty bad. Getting back Malicious is pretty bad. Adding back Grepher is pretty bad. Like, these are just, like, low-impact monsters that you're adding back with Drill Warrior. And I don't think there's really, like, there's not a lot of upside to, like, combining these two engines, in my opinion. Outside of, like, if you're playing Plasma and you just want a consistent way to search it. Okay, they attack, and I just let this attack go through. I don't really need a Mirror Force to protect my Breaker. I have no real conversion in my hand. And on the next turn, I can just, like, set a Dekoichi and bait him to attack into Mirror Force with more than one monster. So, I pick up Legacy of Yata, the sort of namesake of this deck, in a sense. It's sort of like a build-your-own Yata Lock type flip control. And then we set that Dekoichi and we just pass. I don't set the Legacy because I don't actually want to get Heavy Stormed here. Even if they have Heavy Storm, I don't want them to play it. I want to Mirror Force them 2 for 1. That's what I want to do. So they summon nothing. They go Rhoda here first. Yes, they Rhoda for Grepher. And here, I think on the Grepher summon. The reason I think on the Grepher summon is because I want to bluff Torrential. So I bluff Torrential so they don't go for Stardust Dragon before the battle phase. And it is a little bit risky for them here. They send Malicious, they send Plague, and if they go for Stardust Dragon, I mean, they're just crushing. We can't really come back if they go for Stardust Dragon. But if they don't go for Stardust Dragon, I will get my 2 for 1 Mirror Force. I will get to stick a Dekoichi, flip it, and get 2 draws on my next turn. So potentially be able to take over the game if that is the case. They go ahead and attack because they are afraid of that Torrential. I Mirror Force, I get my 2 for 1. And now we're kind of in the driver's seat. I mean, we have the card advantage, and we picked up our reset button in Black Salvo, which is also going to be our 3rd Dark for Dark Arm Dragon. So everything's just, like, coming up really nice. We flip Dekoichi, we draw an extra card, we pick up Chaos Sorcerer. That's going to be insane for us too, because we do have a light as well as several different darks. I go ahead and summon Dialk because I'm like, all right, fuck it, we ball. Let's get aggressive, right? If it's Dandelion, I'll just run it over and run over one of the tokens. That's the only card I've seen so far that they would actually want to set besides Plague. So I'm just assuming it's Dandelion. It is Sangan here, so we are going to miss a few points of damage. Maybe I should have attacked with Dekoichi first in the off chance that it was Sangan. It's pretty safe to assume that Sangan's in a deck like this, so yeah, I probably should have just known. I attacked for 14. There's no Gores. Thankfully, that would have been really awkward for us. And we did flip over a Mask of Darkness for our Dimensional Alchemist. So even if there was a Gores, if they kill the Dialk, we can add back Mask, which can add back Mirror Force, which can out the Gores. So I'm not like super worried about it in that sense. Additionally, we could also just Black Salvo, Black Rose, blow up the field kind of thing. And here we do set the Legacy, because if they go for a Heavy Storm or a Space Typhoon, we'll get that nice little +1 as well. We are ahead one card, but they do have that Malicious in the grave, which they are going to activate after the Plague. I'm assuming that the card they had in their hand was Malicious, most likely. I don't know. I didn't really check. They're going to banish Malicious. They're going to summon it. Normally, you stack something if you want to shuffle it away, or if you don't actually have the second Malicious in deck. They go ahead and Synchro, Plague plus Destiny Hero Malicious, and this is going to make Stardust, I believe. Yep. And this also puts them to 3 darks. So if they do have Dark Arm Dragon, I mean, it's pretty solid here. It's pretty solid. They activate Quick Draw. They discard Dandelion. They grab 2 tokens. And then they go ahead and make Drill Warrior. So this is normally a very threatening situation. This is normally a very scary situation to be in. But that being said, the opponent's at 6,600. Their board is a little bit fragile. Stardust is okay, but Stardust with back row is what you really need to sort of defend yourself from this type of stuff. And we have a lot of powerful plays the next turn. So, as long as we can clear the Stardust, this Drill Warrior isn't really representing that much of a threat. As you can see, in the graveyard, the only thing that the Drill Warrior can really add back that's even marginally annoying is the Dandelion. The rest of these cards we don't really give a shit about. There's no like Raikou, there's no Caius, there's no way to really deal with a Resolved Dark Arm Dragon in their graveyard. They can only stall out against it with the Dandelion. So they attack the 2 monsters in play. Another thing they might have probably thought about considering was maybe not attacking the Dimensional Alchemist. Maybe just attack the Dekoichi and with Stardust and then attack directly with Drill Warrior instead. You're dealing, I think, more damage that way. And then on top of that, where was I going with this? You don't give me the add back effect for Mask of Darkness. So I don't know. They go ahead and attack. And here I say damage, ? Just to sort of like represent the fact that we could be playing honest. I want them to think twice before attacking my light monsters, more or less. This is going to add back Mask of Darkness, and then main phase 2, they're going to discard Necrogarnet, which is actually a really good card to discard here for the Drill Warrior. It's going to help protect that Stardust Dragon just a little bit more, and they're going to banish the Drill Warrior while setting a back row. So now this is actually a pretty good position for the opponent. They have a back row plus the Stardust to defend it. Their life total is reasonably high. They have a Necrogarnet to stop an attack on their Stardust in case we find something like Gale. And then on top of that, Drill Warrior's coming back. So Drill Warrior can make more bodies, or it can just get another Sangan. And despite the Drill Warrior not being so proactive in like grabbing a removal spell or whatever, or I guess that's reactive in a sense, but you get the idea. Despite Drill Warrior not being able to grab a removal spell, it can still grab a Sangan, and if they remain in neutral position until their next turn, a Sangan's going to be good enough to take over this game. On my turn, I pick up the God card, which I sided in alongside my Breakers. Now I'm remembering why I sided in Breaker 2. It's to pop my own Royal Oppression before going for game. But yeah, I draw Royal Oppression here, and that's just the nuts, because we're going to be able to stop this Drill Warrior from coming back, and that's going to be the game. They spent so many cards to make this Drill Warrior, and we're so far ahead. We can just like blindly play cards into their back row, and eventually one of our cards will kill this Stardust. It's just going to be a matter of time. Here I flip Legacy of Yata. I pick up Breaker. That's a way to shut off our own Royal Oppression later on if we need to. We also have Heavy Storm to be able to do that. Now we summon the Black Salvo. We go ahead and bring back Dekoichi. And I synchro into Ancient Fairy Dragon. And based off of the reaction time, I noticed that they had something in their back row that they were considering using, particularly on the Salvo. They thought very hard on the Salvo. So I was thinking, okay, because they were thinking on the Salvo, it's not Bottomless. It could be Book of Moon, but either way, if it's Book of Moon, I should special summon Chaos Sorcerer first, because there is an off chance that it's Solemn Judgment. And if I summon Dark Arm Dragon and then Chaos Sorcerer, I would rather have the Dark Arm Dragon stick around than the Chaos Sorcerer if the back row is Solemn Judgment. Because Dark Arm Dragon can just run over the Stardust, and then pop the token and whatever else. You get the idea. Pop any further cards that they... It's just better to have a Dark Armed in play than a Chaos Sorcerer, obviously, for obvious reasons. So in the case that it is Solemn Judgment, in the off case that it is Solemn Judgment, it is better to summon Chaos Sorcerer first, and I go for it, and they do have Solemn Judgment, so my read was actually correct. And then I go for Dark Armed Dragon here, and then I just attack the Stardust. They Necrogardener, which is exactly what we kind of expected to happen. And then I attack the token. Got to remove that guy so there's no like Caius without sacking the Stardust. And then I do set Heavy Storm and Royal Oppression just because I want to like, I don't know. I want to represent something. There's really no reason for me to set the Heavy Storm here, but I do it because I got to flex at all given opportunities. The nice part about this Royal Oppression activating here is that I'm not actually destroying a card in play. So Stardust Dragon can't negate this activation of Royal Oppression. The way Stardust Dragon reads is when a card or effect is activated that would destroy a card on the field. Since this is not destroying a card on the field, it is just negating the effect from Banish Zone. Stardust Dragon cannot negate this Royal Oppression. And so we are able to stop that Drill Warrior, and we are now up 6 cards to 3 to the opponent, and we're going to be drawing to 7. They do have their own Heavy Storm, which makes me look a little silly for setting mine, but that's okay. They still can't out Dark Arm Dragon, and that's just going to be that. They attack the Ancient Fairy Dragon. I say damage step again, bluff the Honest one more time. They go ahead and Foolish Dandy, just trying to put together some defense so they don't get OTK'd on the next turn. They get 2 tokens, they pass a turn, we draw Compulsory Evacuation Device, which is a really nice one to have here. Now we have a pretty much unbeatable situation. The opponent has 1 turn to top deck anything. The only thing I think they could even possibly top deck is like their own Dark Armed or Brain Control. And in either of those cases, I still win. So I just attack over the Stardust, pop both tokens so they can't draw Caius, set Compulsory, set Mask, and pass, and there's just nothing they can do. Set a back row, Dark Arm pops it, play around Torrential, flip Mask of Darkness, add back Royal Oppression, and attack directly with everything for game. And that's just how it's done with the flip control deck. Now I've got one last replay. And before I show you this replay, I want you guys to like and subscribe if you haven't already. We are well on our way to 10K. I would love to hit that at some point this year. I don't know when is a good end goal, but we've been working towards it. Y'all have been watching these videos for a while. You guys have been subscribing, and if you've made it this far, then you definitely enjoy the content. You're going to like stuff to come. Okay, last replay. So this is my replay against CK49. I do win the die roll, I think. So I've only lost 1 die roll in these games, right? I believe. And my opening hand's actually pretty fucking good. I have Dekoichi, I have Thunder King, and then I have some back row to help defend it. So I just T-set. I want to set the trap card so I can protect, or I can activate my Mask of Darkness, but I don't set the Book of Moon here. The reason I don't set the Book of Moon is this is the first game I've played with this deck. I watched these in reverse order. The first game we watched was the most recent game I have played. This was the first game I have played with this deck. And I didn't think about the Black Whirlwind situation until I had watched this replay. And there's a reason I watched this replay. You guys will see. Turn 1, you guys get to see my #1 most hated card in Edison format. No, it's not Trap Dust Shoot. I actually don't mind Trap Dust Shoot. No, it's not Future Fusion. I'm okay with Future Fusion. The card I hate more than anything else in Edison format is fucking Mind Control. This is the most annoying bullshit card because this card is just terrible here 50% of the time. It's the opponent taking an insane gamble that I didn't set something like Sangin or fucking, what is the other guy? Like a Battle Recruiter or something, or Goblin Zombie. They're just taking like a huge 50-50 that I didn't set a Treeborn Frog or something. And then, of course, the gamble fucking pays off because it's the one time I'm playing Dekoichi.deck and they go blind Mind Control first turn of the game. I fucking hate this card more than I hate any other card. It's only played by decks that piss me off, like Rescue Cat decks or X-Sabers or whatever. And every time I face this card, I lose. I fucking hate this card like with such a passion. I hate this card more than if I were to make one change to Edison format, I would ban the shit out of this card. I put Brain Control to 3. I don't give a fuck. Brain Control is fine. Just don't touch my set monsters, man. That's so fucked. It's so fucked. Okay, back to the game. They flip the Dekoichi. They get the draw, of course. And then, of course, they have a conversion. They have the fucking perfect conversion in Krebins. And they go ahead and synchro, and they could have made Bryonic and bounced my back row too, and just kept me in the worst situation ever. But instead, they go for fucking Urukizes for no fucking reason, and we're able to deprison it. Now we're just down cards, and it just feels bad. It just feels bad. Here, I set Mask of Darkness, set Book of Moon. I just want to get my deprison back against this type of deck. I could have summoned Thunder King, but I was tilted. I was tilted. I'm going to be real. I was just tilted. I should have summoned Thunder King, but I didn't. They go ahead. They attack the Mask of Darkness. I let this go through. I just add back the D Prison. I think this is fine. I could have booked the Goblin, but there's no real reason to. Thunder King will run it over for free. They didn't set any back row last turn, so what are the chances they have back row this turn, right? 0. I summon the Thunder King. I attack over the Goblin Zombie. And I believe I set one more back row. No, I just leave it on Thunder King book. They know we have the D Prison in our hands, so when I set back row in the future, I want it to be a chainable card for reasons. And then here they have Emergency Teleport, so they had a really good fucking hand. They had Emergency Teleport plus Mind Control. Both of these giving them the perfect cards that they need to play through given situations. And then they also have Caius for the conversion, and I just don't have anything to really stop that. So they attack. I book it. I'm going to run it over with my D-Alk if I get a chance to. I summon D-Alk. I banish Book of Moon. I attack Caius. This D-Alk is okay. When it dies, it'll get me back a Thunder King, so I'm not too upset about that. But they do have fucking 3 Darks in grave if they can Power Well maybe, or Book of Life. I don't know. It's not a bad situation for us, but it's not a great situation. Now they do know about the D Prison, so they're gonna summon Mizuki, and then they are gonna Power Well, which is just like fucking insane. And we just die here, because that's how this deck works. This deck is so goddamn good. It's actually so goddamn good. But especially when you draw Mind Control like that, and you have like Mind Control, E-Telly, fucking Power Well. It's just you just can't win. You just can't win. It doesn't matter what you're playing. You're just gonna get OTK'd. Legit, like there's just nothing you can do about that. Game 2, I get to go first, thankfully, because yeah, whatever. Hopefully there's no Mind Control, and even if there was, this time I'm setting fucking Sangan, so I'm sick of that Mind Control shit. I set Bottomless, and then I pass. Opponent draws. They special summon Cyber Dragon. This is very good for us because we have our own to respond to this. They attack over the Sangan. We go ahead and grab Gale. The reason we grab Gale is because I think Gale is just good. It's good to have here. We could special Cyber Dragon. We could synchro with it with the Gale if we decide that that's better depending on our draw. Also, Gale could help us run over like future threats, something like a Caius. If they were going to Caius us in main phase 2 or make a synchro of their own main phase 2 with like Krebins and Cyber Dragon, then the Gale would be pretty good there. So they just pass the turn. They know that they're probably going to lose this to the Gale, but instead I'm actually going to make a Chimera Tech. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to attack for 2,000 and see if they have Gores. They do. They do have Gores. So main phase 2, I'm going to summon that Gale, and I'm going to have the Gores. Now, I could have summoned the Gale before the battle phase, but there's a chance. If they don't have Gores, I actually might want to summon Thunder King instead. So that's why I waited till main phase 2 to use my normal summon. There was definitely a chance where I think making Thunder King is better. I have the Gores, and Starlight Road being the draw is pretty good for us because it means we can set multiple without being scared of Heavy Storm. Now they draw a card for turn. They switch the token to attack. They attack the Gale. I let this go through. I'm looking at killing their token with Phoenix Wing Wind Blast. No, I just let it die. Why did I do that? I guess it makes sense. Yeah, I don't know if they're going to like sack this for Caius main 2. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it totally makes sense. Okay, they attack over the Chimera Tech, trade with the Chimera Tech, and that's totally fine. And I pick up Dark Arm Dragon with 3 Darks in my grave, so I'm like, huh. That's pretty fucking good. I set Mask of Darkness first to play around Torrential Tribute here because I have Starlight Road. I special summon Dark Armed. I priority pop Gores. They activate Torrential Tribute. And thank God I set a monster first because now I'm able to Starlight Road. And that's just going to be the game. We're going to go to game 2. They're going to chain Dust Tornado. I'm going to negate that with Stardust because I actually think having Phoenix Wing is better than having Stardust Dragon in case they have something like Brain Control. And then Dark Arm's going to pop the last back row, and the opponent is going to concede once they realize how fucked they are. All right. So game 1, I got owned by Mind Control, E-Telly, Dark Armed. Game 2, they got owned by Dark Armed. Let's see how game 3 goes. I am going second, and I did, I think, miss sideboard a little bit. I brought in DD Crow, and I didn't side out the Night Assailant Phoenix Wings. I have a new siding pattern for this deck that sides out the Night Assailant and the Phoenix Wings in games 2 and games 3, and there's a reason for it, but I won't quite leak that information just yet. Goes ahead and draws a card for turn here. Summons Krebins, sets a back row, and this Krebins is just fucking annoying. I'm going to summon Gale. I'm going to have it, most likely. Yep, I'm going to banish the Night Assailant. And then I'm going to attack it and try to deal 800. There's no reason to blind Typhoon here. It could be like Bottomless or whatever. Something I don't really need to blind. I could just set the Typhoon too. If they go for like Breaker Pop, I can chain it on their back row or whatever. Now here, they give me a tell. They actually linger in their standby phase for a really long time. And I'm like, okay, your set card's Heavy Storm. I could Typhoon it. but I wouldn't do that if you just didn't linger. So I give this one to my opponent, a freebie. They go Heavy Storm. I go ahead and compulse their monster, just so they can't go for a synchro play. But I know there's a good chance that they can just run over Gale. They go ahead and set Pyramid Turtle, which is an interesting card. I generally don't like Pyramid Turtle in decks like this. I think it's just a weaker inclusion. And then they set another back row. We pick up something, Phoenix Wing, and then I attack with the Gale. Of course we pick up Phoenix Wing after I banish the fucking Night Assailant every single time. I should have banished the DD Crow with this hand. It was really stupid not to. And then I use Gale to have the Pyramid Turtle. I could Brain the Pyramid Turtle and then Synchro, but I don't really see the point. I have Phoenix Wing. I have Brain Control for later on. We'll see if I can use that Brain Control to maybe make an OTK or something like that. They go ahead and set a back row. I think it's better to wait on Brain Control in these types of matchups because they could summon something like Dark Arm 2 or Bryonic. That's just like, you need to have Brain Control for it or else you die. We draw. We are able to go to main phase and flip the Dekoichi and draw a new card. We do find D-Prison. I go ahead and Brain Control, and then I do Synchro into Armor Master. I think they Torrential me here, which fucking sucks because we just lose all of our cards. We lose all of our pressure and all of our cards, and we're just dead. Now we're out that Brain Control, which I probably still should have waited on. I should have just attacked over their turtle, attacked over the monster that they got with the turtle, just played it incredibly slow. It is kind of a 50-50 into Mirror Force, but, like, come on. Like, at least I still have my Brain Control if I had played into Mirror Force instead of this. I could have also Black Rosed here, but yeah, it was kind of a hard decision to make. Because even if I Black Rose those two boards, I have the same position, but I have Brain Control in hand. My cards in hand are DD Crow, which is a -1, and Book of Moon, which is a -1, and Brain Control, which is a -1 without a conversion. So I basically have a 1-card hand to my opponent's 5. Which is bad if I Black Rose. So I felt like I need an Armor Master to stick, or I need a Dekoichi to stick, or I need some sort of pressure going, or else I'm not going to win this game. I set the Phoenix Wing Wind Blast, and then the opponent summons Pyramid Turtle, attacks for 1200. We just take this damage. No, we deprison it. Yeah, I didn't want this to be in play. It is annoying, but like, I think just preserving my life total and drawing to one of my haymakers, like Royal Oppression, which I did side in, is going to be a way that I could potentially win this game. So they go ahead and they summon Krebins, and here I don't really have a great out, so we're just going to take 12. I draw Thunder King, which is great. I'm going to summon it. I'm going to book and run over their Krebins. No, I just attack. I don't want to waste the book in case they have a real back row. So they Phoenix Wing, pitching Malicious, putting my Thunder King on top, and then passing. So keep in mind, now their graveyard has Heavy Storm gone, Phoenix Wing gone. This deck usually only plays 5 outs to Royal Oppression. So they only have like 5 outs to it. They go ahead and activate Malicious. We go ahead and chain Royal Oppression. All right. They attack for 1200. We drop kind of low here, actually. 3900 is not a great spot to be. I draw for turn. It's Thunder King. I attack over the Krebins, and I book it, and then I pass. So the position I'm in is actually pretty good. I have Thunder King. I have Royal Oppression. I have a Phoenix Wing. So I have 3 pieces of interaction that are kind of like separate. They can't really out it with any one card because Heavy Storm is gone. So they're going to have to play through at least 3 pieces of interaction to play this game. They go ahead and just pass the turn. I can't afford to attack into Gores, so I have to pass. I pass with Phoenix Wing in hand. I don't want to set both of them because there's no real reason to. I draw for turn. I pick up another Thunder King, which is actually really nice. I go ahead and set the Phoenix Wing now because now I can have 2 pieces of interaction, the 2 Phoenix Wings. And I don't summon the other Thunder King quite yet, and I just pass again. I can't really afford to play into Gores. Plus, they're going to have to end phase discard if they want to keep holding up that Gores, so here they go for Brain Control. So they're able to Brain Control the Thunder King, which sucks, but on resolution, I do have Phoenix Wing. And I'm going to discard, I think, the DD Crow here, because all the graveyard shit I care about can be stopped by Royal Oppression. Or so I thought, because they end up having Typhoon as well on top of that. And so they drew Heavy Storm, Typhoon, Phoenix Wing. 3 outs to Royal Oppression in the top 14 cards of their deck, which is slightly unlikely, but it's going to happen some percentage of the time. They go ahead and bring out the monster. They summon Krebins. They attack directly for 1200. Attack directly again. I have to Phoenix Wing here in case they have E-Telly. They do have E-Telly. They do bring it out. They do attack for 1200. And then on top of having E-Telly, they have Telekinetic Powerwell to go for the game shot. So you can see why this deck is very broken when you open like all of your limited spell cards in the same hand. You're just like waiting for a small opportunity and you can kill someone out of nowhere. The Welly Dad deck is probably still the best or one of the best decks in Edison formats, like a clear S tier contender. And you can kind of see here why. Like Look at what I had. I had fucking Royal Oppression, double Wind Blast, Brain Control, Compulsory Deep Prison, Typhoon, Book of Moon, DD Crow, double Thunder King, and I still just got OTK'd by like fucking 5 cards. It's so dumb. This deck is so dumb. It's really, really good. So definitely respect this deck. Still, people ask me my opinions on it all the time, and I just think it's fucking amazing. I think it's like one of the best decks in Edison format for sure. Again, let's go back to this deck. I've undoubtedly timed out, I'm assuming. Let's go ahead and refresh. Lost connection? Okay, sounds good, buddy. Why does my browser want to fucking... Okay, there we go. There we go. We're refreshing. We're refreshing now. Let's do a little bit of a reflection on this deck. I don't think I sideboarded very well in that last game, and I don't think I played very well either. I probably should have hung on to that Night Assailant, but my sideboarding patterns are now a little bit different with that deck into Welly Dad after I reviewed that match the first time. And I think that the updated side pattern with the flip deck, it should do pretty well into those types of zombie synchro strategies. And you saw me take out one of those or 2 of those in the replays before. I can't remember how many we played against in this video. Yeah, so this deck, reflections on this deck. I think this is a very serious deck. This deck is a no bullshit, like fucking solid good player deck. I feel like you flip deck Koichi, you draw a card. If you have card advantage, usually the best player with the card advantage is always going to win. That's just how it goes. And this deck does a great job of picking up card advantage. The top 10 cards of this deck are all just raw +1s. And then you have a +3 right here. You have 2 cards that can float into your raw +1s again. You have Thunder King, which is like a floodgate / it's a +1 if your opponent ever synchros, let's be real. You got Cyber Dragon for speed, and it's also +1 into any machine. So a lot of your monsters are just raw +1s. And then you have a really heavy amount of quality in all of your cards. Legacy of Yata is that new tech that helps you get pluses off of Space Typhoon and Heavy. And then, yeah, just the best traps, the best spells, and the best sideboard cards. Royal Oppression does really well in this deck, too. I think that's something that's a really big draw to this deck for me, is that it can side Royal Oppression a little bit more effectively than like your standard zombie synchro deck. If I set Royal Oppression and I have like Mask of Darkness or Dialk or Thunder King or whatever, that's actually pretty good. Like, it's just a pretty hard situation to beat, and I can pop it with my own breakers and shit. It's a really cool deck. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and of course subscribe. See you guys in the next vid. Peace.